Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Beitz. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today is JD Danny McCabe, who grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as the middle child of a very large family. From an early age, he was independent and a practical realist. This first-time author began writing his diary as a historical journal of events during the demise of his marriage that evolved quickly and came without context. Danny was encouraged to share this personal and unbelievable voyage in rediscovering himself by the many people who witnessed and heard about his journey firsthand. He's blessed with two beautiful adult children and resides in Charleston, South Carolina. JD, welcome to the podcast.
Doug, thank you very much. It's good to chat with you again, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And just for the audience, about a week ago, we had a chat and talked about things and what transpired with his marriage and things that are happening and how that's all going to tie into intuition. And I'm going to get right into it here, straight up. You, like, through this time when your marriage was starting to, go downhill quickly, you had a medical test. And and that medical test found an unusually high amount of arsenic in your body. Tell us, how did we get to that point?
Oh, yeah. And so I mean, I cover a small part of it in the book. The book is far more than about the arsenic poisoning. I did not discover that until about a year after we had separated. So when we were still in the marriage, I started working out a couple days a week, nothing too intense, no cardio, just lifting a little weight. And I used to go about 250, 255. And quickly, in less than 6 weeks, Doug, I lost 35 pounds and then 40 pounds and then 45. And then I started experiencing some medical symptoms, some tingling in my fingers and
And
toes
were
and
you
stuff.
doing anything different? Like, had you suddenly started the exercise and thought that might have dropped the weight or not?
I thought just working out, because I hadn't really worked out in years, but I thought working out and switching from Coke to Diet Coke, I thought, man, this is a miracle. This is a miracle. And I didn't make any, I usually ate pretty good, but I didn't make any dietary changes or anything like that. And I thought, this is absolutely amazing, until I got to 40 and 45. And then I started having tingling in my fingers and toes and intestinal issues and dizzy spells and difficulty swallowing. And then got concerned and went to see my family practitioner to be evaluated. And ultimately, over the course of the next few months, I would be evaluated for leukemia, Lou Gehrig's disease, early onset of Parkinson's. I had every test you could possibly think of, and they couldn't figure anything out. They couldn't explain why a lot of my blood work was abnormally high, white blood cell counts, creatinine phosphokinase, and other things. But I did not make the ultimate discovery until after we had separated for about a year. And I went to the authorities with the test, and they said, unless you have direct proof linking it to your soon to be ex wife, there is nothing we can do. And unfortunately, in spite of a court order, she had destroyed her phone, she had destroyed computers. And so there was really no evidence to be found to link it back to her. But I had a positive hair and nail test that was done to confirm chronic exposure. And I was led to that particular position because there were folks in my family that said, I believe she had been poisoning you. And my sister-in-law has a PhD, has her doctorate in nursing, and she's the one that said it early on. And then when we thought we had discovered who she might have been running around with outside of our marriage, this particular individual had a PhD in organic chemistry. So I thought, oh, he would have the wherewithal to either come up with it or figure out how to poison me. And turns out this guy never existed. So there's a lot of twists and turns in the book, a lot of shocking revelations, and folks have described it as a real page turner and something that they couldn't put down. But that is just a very small piece of the story.
Yeah. So, and I'm wondering there, like when we talked last week, I said, did you have any intuitive inclination at all, and you sort of indicated not. And I was thinking about it after that conversation. With intuition, I get into stuff like, we everything's energy. Our body emits a frequency where we sense, just like in your car, your radio picks up a frequency through the air, and you pick up the local radio station. And if you don't want to listen to
Yeah.
that one, you listen to a different one. I'm wondering whether the arsenic in your body, however it got in there, um, tended to reduce that frequency, and like literally take the antenna down on your car so that it couldn't pick up some of the radio stations. It couldn't pick up some of the messages, some of the what was other people may have picked up. Do you think that could have been possible?
Yeah, I've given some thought to it too since we last spoke, but I'll just clarify for your audience that I believe that she was putting the arsenic in my protein powder because I started using protein powder after I worked out. Again, the protein powder was destroyed. But I've thought about our discussion around intuition, and the thing that popped in my head, Doug, was that logic sometimes gets in the way of intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wonder if just being in a state of emotional confusion and clouded judgment, what that would do to intuition. So, I mean, I was in an emotional fog. And as I think we talked, you know, probably about 6, 7 months prior to us separating, I spent 9 days, excuse me, I spent 9 days in a psychiatric facility. I was involuntarily committed. I mean, I was emotionally abused and hollowed out and broken down. So when I came out of there, obviously my head was pretty screwed up. And then I would endure additional emotional abuse prior to us separating. And so I often wonder if just being emotionally in a fog caused me to not see things clearly as they are. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to come back to the comment I made about logic can get in the way of intuition. Is she also alleged to have had an autoimmune disease. And anytime that my gut would start percolating or my intuition would come on thinking something's not right here, why is she accusing me of infidelity? Why is she accusing me of abusing drugs? It would later turn out that everything she was accusing me of doing, she was actually doing. But I looked back at her alleged autoimmune disease and chalked up a lot of what I was seeing to that. And that's where I say kind of logic getting in the way of intuition is I thought I had an explanation for her mood swings, her paranoia, her delusions. And I would later, once we separated, discover it was it was due to her hidden prescription drug addiction. She was taking some powerful medications that clearly altered her brain chemistry. But
Yeah.
there were moments when my gut was tingling and telling me that something's not right. And I think the biggest alarm went off the night before our first mediation. And in the States, in the court system, they like you to sit down with two attorneys and try to solve it outside of the court system. We were unsuccessful after 4 attempts in doing that. But the night before, my sister-in-law said something to me. She said, Danny, she said, the guilty are usually the accusers. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And that was the first time that I started to dig into her phone records. I paid for our cell phone, so I had access to it. But I had to call the provider, the telecom provider, to figure out how the hell do I even access these accounts and look at what numbers she's been calling. That was the first time that I said, perhaps she's been cheating on me. Perhaps everything she's accused me of doing, she was doing. And that revelation would only be reinforced the next day when she made the accusation that I gave her a sexually transmitted disease. She made that accusation through the attorneys, and thus the title of the book, The Third Gift. So the third gift is when she made that revelation. And it was a huge aha moment for me to go, okay, God smacked me across the face and said, all right, you can't see it. Your intuition's not working. You're failing to see what's going on. I'm going to help you see that your marriage is over.
Yeah. So that was the third gift, and your first and second gift?
My two kids. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. My son Billy and my daughter Katie, who are, as you said in the opening, young adults now. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And so on that day, you were handed something from her attorney saying, and you knew you didn't have any sexually transmitted diseases. So it's like, how could
Correct.
I have given it to her? And what my sister-in-law said, the accuser is, guilty of that thing. Yeah. So it's starting, the lights are starting to come on. I guess the universe or whoever like helps send our intuition through is like tried to make it very obvious to everyone. Like, yeah.
It couldn't have been more obvious. And then I got to work. I got to work and got into her medical claims and her pharmacy claims because I was a primary card holder for our insurance, so I had access to all that stuff. I had no idea what I had access to at my fingertips through our insurance company's website.
Mm,
I had access to 5 years of data, and I spent hours and hours building spreadsheets and looking at doctors and looking at prescriptions and going, who's this doctor? Who's this doctor? I had never heard of her going to see this particular doctor. And I mapped it all out. I started to begin to build the truth. And as a result of that, I was able to reestablish some emotional stability and to begin to reestablish who I was as a man and as a father, because I had lost that for a year and a half.
yeah.
And the mistake that I made in doing so was that when things started to get rocky in our marriage, I didn't tell anybody about it. I confided in nobody. And that isolation enabled her and her mother. It's in the subtitle is My Dance with the Devil and Her Mother, because her mother played an integral role in the abuse and things when things started to go south. Two women that I loved unconditionally and that I never had a crossword with. I think it's important to note that we had a 17-year marriage that was, I would call it, fairly stable and happy at the time as I saw it then. But yeah, then all hell broke loose.
Yeah, wow. And you were talking there, looking through the pharmaceutical records, and just before we started recording, you were telling me it's an industry you've worked in for many years. So, like, it would be very easy for you to start looking at these medications and knowing exactly what they were for.
Yeah,
They
and if I
weren't.
didn't know what they were, I just Google them and figure it out. But
Yeah,
there was a slew of medications that I had no idea she was taking, and I discovered going back 5 years that there were two prescriptions that she took every month that were marked private. I couldn't see what the drug name was, so I called the insurance company and said, "How does somebody set this up?" And she said, "No, your ex-wife or soon-to-be ex-wife set that up in her profile." And so I demanded that they tell me what they are and who was prescribing them. I said, I'm paying all of her medical bills. Now, it took me multiple phone calls to get to the right person, but they would later confirm that it was, three different formulations of amphetamines and several other things that she was abusing. So there was one discovery after another. And I've laid out the majority of it in the book. Yeah.
yeah. And she even, like you were saying before, you spent 9 days, not by choice,
Right.
um, locked away, and she before that had been talking to your medical professional, who then said, "You've got one choice. You're going in there." And
Correct.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
wouldn't discover that until I wouldn't discover the letters she had written behind my back. So she not only broke me down, but she set me up. I discovered that 2 days before I was involuntarily committed, she wrote letters to my psychiatrist at the time and the family practitioner. And
mm.
those exact letters are in the book. And I left them unedited. I wanted them as real and raw as they could be. So
So I'm just wondering, like you're talking about emotions earlier, what any particular emotions that were like popping up that like pretty regular through it all?
the one that and we talked about this, but the one that I always anchored on, it took work, but the one that I always anchored on was gratitude and being grateful. Grateful for, believe it or not, grateful for her greed, grateful for how evil she was, that she was going to try to hang all of her indiscretions on me. Because had she never revealed what she had contracted outside of our marriage, I don't know where I would be today. But of course, I experienced every emotion from shock, disappointment, betrayal, anger. And those oftentimes flooded in quickly. And then again, gratitude would rise to the top, going, all right, you got a way out here. You've got the start of the truth. You were beat into the ground for something that you knew you didn't do, but you were lacking evidence to prove your innocence. And she handed me the proof, or the start of the proof at least.
Mm.
But there was lots of emotions. The one that I tried to avoid the most is self-pity and victimization, because I never saw myself as a victim. Certain days you would begin to wallow in it and go, "This is awful," because it was a 5-year journey through hell. It wasn't a quick trip. It was a long walk through hell. But the thing that kept me grounded, Doug, on the in keeping self-pity at bay, was remembering that I had my 2 kids were going through this as well. You know, they spent their entire high school and college careers enduring all of this. So that kind of kept me grounded and kept me focused on, okay, they're dealing with this as well. You're not alone.
Yeah.
Secondarily, hearing other people's stories, you go, okay, in spite of all that you're going through and as bad as you think it is, people have it far worse. So it's something I'll call it, relativity. Staying grounded in relativity and recognizing that you don't have it as bad as others do.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's very, very true. So I'm just wondering if something similar started to happen in your life now, not exactly the same thing with a partner, but do you feel like you'd listen to your gut a bit more than you did back then? So I guess what I'm saying is, are your spidey senses more alert now than they were?
They absolutely are. Yep. Yeah, and I've been blessed to have been and I'm doing it long distance. I met this wonderful woman. I was introduced to her by a longtime friend. And 6 months into our relationship, I said, I'm moving to Charleston. So I moved 4.5 hours away, but we see each other quite a bit. But my senses were, she's been very open and transparent. And certainly at our ages, you come with a lot of baggage and a lot of history. And she's been very transparent in sharing kind of what her past has been. But yeah, there've been some occasions where, yeah, my senses were definitely tingling, and there was intuition. Uh, I was certainly on high alert, going, look, for me, I don't think it was, I don't want to get hurt again. It was, I don't want to put in the effort. I'm not going to, become vulnerable and put in the effort into a relationship if, in fact, this is not the right person. But 4 years in, so far, I would say that she is the right person, and we've been open and very transparent with each other. And any time that I've had a gut feel with her, I've gone to her and I said, I need some clarity on this particular issue you've raised. Let's talk through it.
Yeah. All right. So you're talking there about vulnerability. And with writing the book, talking on podcasts like this, you're making yourself very vulnerable. Do you
Mhm.
think it's helped or hindered you to move on with your life?
I think at times, in when the book first came out, 3 years ago, when I was writing it, I think it was a double-edged sword, because as I had to unpack all the boxes, all the trauma that I had tucked away, compartmentalized it all. Yeah, I had some issues when the book was released, and I went back into therapy for a short period of time. It was also at the same time that I had lost my mother, so I had, other traumatic events going on in my life and other transitions with my daughter going off to college, and so I had to kind of get recentered. But I would say overall, it's been very helpful. Been very helpful, and especially for those that have been gracious enough to read it. They've reached out to me on the various social media platforms, and thanked me for being vulnerable, thank me for sharing my story. Certainly as a perspective from a male side, because one of the reasons why I wrote it, many reasons why I wrote it, but my female therapist at the time encouraged me to write it years ago. She said, when you're done with all this, you're going to need to write a book, because there's just not enough books out there about men in abusive relationships.
Yeah, no, I hear
And
you there.
yeah, so, but I would say that I would do it again. It's been very, very cathartic, and um, yeah, it's helped me to find peace for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like emotions, I, I've come to learn my current thoughts on emotions is they're all good. It doesn't matter
Yep.
what they are, they're all good. But emotions, like all good things, we can have issues with them. They can get stuck. And they can even get stuck in physical parts of our bodies. Where we And so I'm wondering, like, with you talking, reliving these scenes all the time, you know, you've done quite a few podcasts and that sort of thing. You keep talking about what's happened over and over. Do you find that it has released those emotions from you, or like after you've talked, like after we finish talking here and we shut the Zoom call down, are you likely to curl up in the corner and bawl your eyes out because you've relived the whole thing again, or are you just feeling fresher, better, off with your day? Like, where is it for you?
It's a great question. I'm smiling right now. But I would feel, I'm going to feel fresher. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to thank you for yet another free therapy session. But because what I come back to is gratitude and being grateful. And there's a song, and there's a line in the song. I'm trying to I can't think of the artist right now. I'm a little bit hurt. The title of the song is "I'm a little bit hurt, but I'm a lot more free." And so one of the lines in the song is, "Am I crazy for being grateful for all the pain?" So there are some days where I say to myself, "Are you crazy for being grateful for all this pain?" Because I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for it because, and I would go through it again, believe it or not, because of all that has come out of it, because of the renewed strength, my renewed faith, um, and again, gratitude and being grateful is just an extremely powerful tool. Because as we talk through some of the events and relive them, I'm going, it could have turned out a lot worse. What would have happened to me if she never revealed that sexually transmitted disease? I would never have looked at her medical records or her medical claims and pharmacy claims, because I never, for the life of me, thought that she was out running around on me. I never thought that she was doing drugs. I chalked a lot of her behavior up to an alleged autoimmune disease that we would later discover she doesn't even have. So I was
Mm.
dealing with somebody that had some serious, and probably still does, has some serious, mental health issues for sure.
Yeah. And what if you never got out of that institution? Like after 9 days, you were still there. 9 years
Yeah.
later, you're still there. Like that, yeah, life would have been extremely different.
And,
Yeah.
and and that's the other thing I think about on occasion, because when I was in there, you think this is rock bottom. First of all, how the hell did I get here? But I'm here, and this is rock bottom. But little did I know that there was 4 more years of extreme darkness that lay ahead. She was just getting warmed up, to be honest with you.
Mm. So
But
when you
also
were,
being in the facility, in the institution, you get a real up close and personal perspective of folks with legitimate mental health issues, and you go, okay, I'm not so bad off. I don't have what they're telling me I have. And again, fortunately, being in the medical and pharmaceutical field for 30 plus years, I have some knowledge that I could lean on that. And yeah, I mean, things could have been a lot worse. And that's a perspective that I always try to keep centered, is just keeping that in mind that things could be a lot worse.
yeah, and that's what I was just wondering, being in that facility there, like, I guess as each day unfolded, you would think, Are they letting me out today?" And then like the
Right.
day would end and you wouldn't. And it's like, how long am I going to be here? And that's what I was wondering, like, what was it like being in there? Because, I mean, of all the people listening, very few people listening will have had that experience. You know,
Yeah.
and my only experience of it is television. And so
Yeah.
it's like, oh, and I'm thinking, I haven't watched that many movies like that. I mean, one that comes to mind from like forever ago was the Jack Nicholson movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, when I was like
Right.
teenager or something like that. And yeah, I mean, that sort of made a mockery of the whole thing where he escaped with them and takes them all, but, and
Yeah.
I'm like, hang on, I'm talking to someone here who's actually experienced it for 9 days being in there. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what was that like? Like, like, did you have emotions of fear? Like, am I never getting out of here? Am I really like these other people
I,
who I'm seeing are different?
I yeah, I knew I would get out of there, but your point was great, because every day would go by and I'd go, when am I getting out of here? And because I was involuntarily committed, I needed obviously to be released by a doctor, and my inpatient psychiatrist. And while I was in there, I missed my daughter's 16th birthday. I didn't talk to my kids for 9 days because I didn't want to talk to them when I was in there. She didn't come visit all that often, maybe once or twice, but it was, yeah, there was fear. What was weird, Doug, and it was interesting because I was thinking about this the other day, is it was a co-ed setup. They had men and women together. I was 49 at the time. There were young kids in there that were college age. So it was a hodgepodge of people that were in there. But there were some seriously mentally ill folks that were in there that I'm kind of my strategy was to make friends with the ones that I thought were the furthest gone, because I'm like, I'm going to try to stay close to this individual so they don't hurt. There were no locks on our doors. You had a plastic shower curtain. You couldn't lock a bathroom door to take a shower. You had some women I had a woman in there that was assaulted by another guy. A young lady was assaulted by another guy. I mean, it was insane. My second roommate didn't sleep in the room. He, believe it or not, I don't know if people believe me. He was a guy that I had an encounter with a year before I ended up in there. He was a homeless man that I ran into at a gas station and had a brief interaction with him. It wasn't a friendly interaction. He thought I was looking at him, but he was hearing voices and whatever else. I was filling up my car with gas, and then lo and behold, he turns out to be my second roommate. And I'm like, oh, come on, God, how much more? But he didn't sleep in the room. But every night, I didn't sleep much because every 10 or 15 minutes, they're coming into the room with a flashlight, checking your eyes to make sure you haven't hung yourself. You didn't have anything to hang yourself with other than maybe some threadbare sheets. But if I wanted to hang myself, I had nothing to hang myself with. If you wanted to shave, you would need a doctor's orders to shave because, of course, they didn't want you to have a razor blade, which I understand that. But they took away my belt, and my size 38 jeans were falling off me, and you had plastic tabs to hold your pants on. It was awful. It was awful. And when I was finally released from there, just feeling the fresh air on my face, the sun on my face, thinking, okay, this is over with. And again, like I said, little did I know what lie I had, but I only dedicated a chapter in the book to the psych facility. I probably could have written 3 or 4 more chapters, but I met everybody from military to college professors to, met a military guy that ended up in there. I said, how did you end up in here? And he's like, well, they wouldn't give me my paid time off. So I told him I was going to kill myself. And I'm like, well, I hardly view this as a vacation. But the saddest part for me that I was terrorized by a few years later was the young kids that were truly suicidal, that attempted to take their lives, that for whatever reason confided in me and said, look, I don't want to leave, but they're discharging me tomorrow and I've gotten no help. I'm afraid I'm going to just try to kill myself when I go home. And I would have nightmares about these young kids after I got out of the facility. When the book was released, I'd have a little PTSD that these young kids would show up in my house with, guns to their heads, and there was nothing I could do to save them. So work through all of that, but it was a god awful experience. But again, looking back, I'm like, all right, it gave me some insight into the fact that, yeah, my mental health is not where some of these folks are. But back to my second roommate, just real quick, is he didn't sleep in the room. He slept out in the lobby, but he would come in my room every night about 3 o'clock in the morning. Again, I slept maybe 15 minutes here or there, and he would urinate on the side of my bed religiously every night. I'd go to the staff and say, look, is there anything you can do to, stop this from happening? And they're like, yeah, we'll do the best we can, which meant, yeah, we're not going to do anything about it.
Wow.
So it was interesting for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I could see gratitude kicking in as you were heading outside to the car park and like in the sunshine, and they're like, oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
make you happy when you wake up at home in your own little home. So I guess, if there's anyone listening and their living facilities, living quarters are not like what they want, it's like, well, your alternative that you shared for 9 days was not as nice as something
Yep.
basic that we've all got to be thankful for. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, the mattress was thin prison type mattress. I've never been to prison, but that's as close to prison as I want to get. Mattress was paper thin, sheets were paper thin, and it was on a piece of plywood,
Yeah,
So it was, yeah, it was quite the experience for sure.
yeah, and not. I mean, one standard thing to keep our mental health good is good sleep, and so there's nothing conducive there to
No.
assist with that at all. It's going the opposite way. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and they would prescribe whatever meds they could to just keep you sedated. So fortunately, I was not on a ton of medications, but they did try to put me on an antipsychotic, which I had to take when I was in there. But as soon as I got out, I stepped myself off that antipsychotic because I'm like, I don't need this. And first of all, it's making my legs feel like concrete. So I said, I'm getting off of this stuff.
Mm,
But the rest of the folks in there was just keep them sedated and keep them here a handful of days, and then we'll get them out. I think my stay, and I won't get into the broken healthcare system in the States that we talked about earlier, but um, I think I stayed 9 days because I had insurance. They were getting paid.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Whereas your homeless friend, he may have been there a little short. He didn't have any cash to pay. Yeah.
They weren't getting paid for him. And there was quite a few homeless people in there that would say, yeah, I'm just going to leave here. When I get discharged, I'll go resupply shampoo and toothpaste and whatever. I'm going to come back, tell them I'm going to kill myself. And they have no choice but to readmit me. I'm like,
Right.
wow.
Well, I
Just
guess
so they had a place to stay.
they're getting fed. They're out of the heat or the cold. It's probably air conned, and yeah,
Yep.
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 So for them, it's a step up. Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's yeah, the life and yeah, the lives that some people live. It's yeah, it's an eye opener, isn't it?
It's heartbreaking, it's eye opener, and again, but it's a reminder that yeah, man, things could be far worse.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I might have shared it with you last week. Like years ago, I heard the term most men live lives of quiet desperation. And as you were saying about the young people there that was haunting you later, they're quietly desperate inside and they don't know what to do. And this is one reason I'm trying to encourage men to show them like the reasons to develop their intuition. And
Yeah.
the part of that, I was thinking I've got a discussion with some guys next week, and we always have a little theme. And for next week, I was thinking, you know, what what things have you changed in your life, men? And these are all men that are, highly intuitive. Some of them are coaches, all sorts of stuff. What have you found that reduces your intuition? And that made me think about the arsenic, the different, what's going to take your antenna down so that you're
Yep.
less receptive to things. And a week or two ago I was talking with someone on a podcast, and subject came up about that, and we were talking about crystals. And like, I never had one, but I've often heard that as children people have radio sets and they have crystals in there because the
Hmm.
crystals amplify frequencies. And so there's something in there to amplify the frequency to make us more sensitive. And if it's a radio signal, we can get a tune into that and take the static out of it, and it comes through, and it comes through the speaker, and we can hear that frequency as it comes through, or the frequencies coming to our television set, through the air. It's wireless, it comes through, and then it decodes and comes out as pixels on a screen, and we see the image, and away it goes. But yeah, like those young men in that quiet desperation, and they're in there, and potentially they're being given some sort of medication that is potentially reducing their frequency. It's pulling their antennas down. Their spidey sensors are going offline.
Absolutely, for sure. And the other thing that I will say is that'll bring your intuition down, as we talked about a little bit earlier, is isolation, losing a sense of objectivity, right? And so by myself isolating myself, and once I was locked up, a couple of my brothers got involved, thank God. So people were pulled in from a support perspective. But yeah, losing a sense of objectivity and allowing someone to isolate you will absolutely bring your frequency down for sure. And when your antenna is inward focused, you're looking in the mirror too much, going, okay, what did I do? How's this my fault? You're trying to self-examine to figure out what did I do in this marriage and how can I make it right? And I did everything I possibly could to try to bring peace and resolve whatever conflict was going on. But when that antenna is not pointed upward and it's pointed inward, then there's only one frequency you're going to hear, and that's your significant other telling you that where we're at today is your fault, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. That's and like you said that when your brothers came in, there's that community. Like human beings, I don't believe are made to act and be on our own for a long
Right.
time. We are very much in need of being around other people, feeling the energy of other human beings, etc. And we need to confide in them, share with them, and when two or three of us come together or more, we start talking about a topic or something like that. That brainstorming just trigger things off. Now we've got three antennas up, and
Yep.
that's not three times as powerful. That might be 10 times as powerful as one antenna up. We're all bringing in, and there's this corporate antenna up to the universe. Like, and most of the time it's not obvious that's someone had a light bulb moment, but you and your two brothers are talking, they're using all their previous life experience, they're questioning you, asking you, what's this, what happened, how did that happen, what's going on. Well, and then all of a sudden you're hearing intelligent conversation from someone who cares with you, someone who understands where you came from, particularly when it's your siblings.
Yes.
You
Yes.
grew up together, and that they're not there to like become a benefactor to your will, or they've got some ulterior motive. They're there because they've taken time out of their life to come and sit with you and talk with you, and I guess in the hope that if that happened to them, they know you'd come, and so we've got each other's back. And yeah, you go back to the cavemen back then. They lived in groups. They had to protect each other. If they were in a tight spot, well, I guess they'd have turns staying awake at night to
Yep.
keep the tribe healthy, and they lived together. And yeah, yeah. So for men out there listening, if you've got shit going on in your life, talk to someone. Talk to
Yep.
someone.
The
Maybe,
additional perspectives are powerful. They help you to see things that you're not seeing clearly, for sure.
yeah. And so you could go to an independent third party, and you would get some perspective, or you could go to the person that you're perceiving the problem with. And sometimes that perception may change. You might go, oh, I thought you were talking about this or meant this, or you did this or that. And it's like sometimes the perspective might change a little because you're like, oh, I didn't realize, you talked yourself into some big story where they were, you know, making it worse. In your case, not so, but yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just quite simple. So communication's just very important.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah. So just looking through my questions here, got a big one, a big question here for you.
Yeah.
So take your time to answer it,
Okay.
and we'll specialize it to men. If your microphone was connected to all 8 billion people on the planet right now, so everyone on the planet's listening, but you knew they wouldn't judge, blame, or shame you for anything that you said, what would you say to the men in particular?
Hmm. I hate to keep coming back to the isolation thing, but I would it's so well, I'd say a couple of things. It's okay not to be okay. Um, don't try to figure things out on your own. Surround yourself with some individuals that have your best interest at heart, because they will give you perspective. They will guide you through different difficult times. They will give you some valuable advice. Um, and it's okay to process your emotions. All of them, the negative, the positive, whatever. It's okay to process them all.
When you say process, How are you meaning there with your emotions? Like, I've got a fair idea, but I'm just curious for the
I
listeners.
mean, it's okay. It's okay to be angry as long as it's appropriately directed and that doesn't become physical in nature. It's okay to be sad. It's okay. Again, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to experience disappointment. The phrase that which I've worked on since I've gone through this in the past, if something was eating at me, somebody would ask me if they could tell something wasn't right. I would say, it's all good. I'm good. So the phrase "I'm good," that's, I guess, let me retract what I'd say the 8 billion men or whatever is, "I'm good" needs to go out the window. If you're not good, it's okay to tell somebody that this is why I'm not good. This is what you did to offend me, to upset me, to whatever. Um, Conversation is powerful. And to your earlier point, understanding perspectives and making sure that what was said we interpreted it properly. But it's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay at times to feel a little bit sorry for yourself, but again, process those real quickly. And more importantly than anything else is again, not judge me, as I would say, put God in the center of your life. Where I found true peace, Doug, in the last couple of years is by making God more of a priority in my life. And I'm not ashamed to stand up and say that. And I'm not ashamed to say that to 8 billion men or whatever that I'd have the opportunity to. Is he's given me the strength. He's put the right people in my life to walk me through hell, and some days crawl through hell. But gratitude and being grateful for that is kind of what puts a spring in my step every day that I get out of bed.
Yeah, nice, nice. Yeah, no, I love that. That's great advice for the men out there listening. Don't do it on your own. Seek out some good help. And like you said, you've the last few years, you've got God in your life now. So you've got like this powerful big brother, whatever, you've
Yeah,
got you've got some faith that someone's got your back, that,
yeah,
you know, God's not coming into the room with you, sitting down, having a direct chat, shaking your hand, but God knows who to send. Like,
yeah,
and that one day sent your two brothers, and I'm sure many other times sent lots of other people. It's like, and so on the other hand, we're all God's messengers too. Like
right.
we intuitively might get, you need to ring JD. And you're like, oh, really? I only talked to him 2 days ago. Like, and I usually only talk to him once a month. Oh, I'll ring him again, or whatever, like whatever. So those intuitive things, it's, yes, we get support from it, but also we get to support others through it. And I find that you either use it or you lose it. So
Yep,
the messages come in to suggest that we should do something, say something, etc. So to help us, but there's also messages will come in for us to help others. And when we're helping others, it helps us as well. We benefit from it both ways. So it's not a one-way street. You can feel like you're giving all the time and it's too much, but there's obviously always needs to be a balance there with that. So yeah. So for the
we need
men,
the brotherhood. We need the brotherhood just like the sisters need their sisterhood, right? The women are really good at sticking together
yeah.
and sharing their emotions and whatever. It's like, no, we deserve that. We deserve that as well. So
Yeah, yeah. And when
yeah,
you say like sharing emotions, it can, some of the men might think, oh yeah, I'm not going to do emotions. I interviewed a lady on here a few weeks ago, and she brought out a good point. She said, like we were talking about this thing, and she said, for women, when you talk about, experiencing emotions, it's usually like sadness, things like that. And so like for a guy, it's like, I don't want to express my sadness and start crying around people or whatever. She said the facts are, from what she knows, she said for men, well, for women, sadness would be one of the first emotions to appear. Whereas for a woman, anger might be, I think, number 5 down the list. Whereas for men, often anger is the first emotion that wants to come out. And so it's like, but if we hold that anger in, it can be very unhealthy for us. So if we, and obviously we're not going to get angry in the middle of the supermarket and start punching shelves and throwing cans of food around, like that's not healthy either. But if we can, like, if we had at a moment in the supermarket, we might want to remove ourselves to our car on our own, and we might want to slam the steering wheel, and we might want to let a few four-letter words out,
Yep.
and bang, and just whoa, let it out and get it over with, and then breathe, breathe a sigh of relief, like, oh, got that out,
Yep.
and we,
I think it bears repeating what you said. Remove yourself from the situation, because when I was back in the marriage, I mean, she wanted me to get physical with her. She wanted me to hit her. She wanted me to pay. And when I wouldn't do it, when I didn't do it, she ended up doing herself. She ended up smacking her own backside and taking pictures of it and trying to hang me for that as well. But whenever things got heated, I would remove myself from the situation. I'd leave the house. I'd go somewhere and sit for a little while till I could calm down. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, but I think it's also about understanding the root of that anger. In some guys, that anger could be that we have not processed emotions for years. There are things that have been building up that we have let go, that we've let go, that we've let go, that we haven't talked to somebody about, or we haven't addressed with a significant other or a friend or whatever. That we haven't the whole "I'm good" thing eventually explodes in your internal.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
And that's a men
so
thing. I'm good, and for women, it's I'm fine. When
yeah,
I hear that, I'm like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. Like,
yeah. You
my
can tell by
wife's,
the look on
yeah,
you can tell
yeah,
by the look on their face. Yeah,
yeah, my wife's
I'm
fine.
fine.
Oh, what have I done? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Same as like, oh, I'm all good. It's all good. Like,
I'm all
yeah,
good. It's all good. Yeah, it's all good. Don't worry
yeah,
about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's all good because I've just been keeping a lid on it for a couple of years now, and then sometimes we explode. And I've done that many years ago. A couple of occasions. I consider myself very passive and calm and laid back, chilled out. But there's a couple of significant points in my life where I just lost the plot because I'd let it build up for a long time. And I verbally screamed at people, gone troppo. I used to be a professional firefighter, and one day I was an officer in charge, and we used to line the guys up on parade every morning, and that wasn't my role. I was sort of like the next level up to that. But this one particular day, something went down, and I just took the duties folder off the officer, and I said, I'm doing parade this morning, and out I went, mate. I got in these guys' faces like a military drill sergeant day one, and just screamed in their faces because things were slackening off a lot, and it was 100 times more than what needed to occur. And I've talked to some of those guys many, many years later, and they're just like, no one, they just stood there like in absolute fear, shaking and trembling. And all of them physically could have taken me out at any moment, because I was never a big, tough kind of guy. But mate, talk about put the fear of God in them. And I look back and I think, God, that was just so stupid. Like I achieved really nothing from it. It was
Yep.
just a ridiculous venting moment. It wasn't even like I'm a tough drill sergeant. This is what I do every day. Like every day I'm going to like keep you guys in line. No, no, no. It was just nuts. So looking back here, and it had nothing to do, what was going on was really nothing to do with what those guys were doing. They were
Yeah.
just like, what just happened here? Yeah. So
You don't happen to have a video of that, do you? I'd like to see
no,
that.
I was no, 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 no. Because lucky back then, there wasn't even cell phones back then. Like I joined the fire service 40 years ago. So this would have been about 30 years ago. So and
Okay.
I talked to my wife now, and the things we used to get. Well, not she didn't, but me and my mates when we were teenagers. Thinking we were just so blessed there weren't cameras, like CCTV
Yep.
footage and cell phones with cameras everywhere. Because like we just could do ridiculous stuff and get away with it all the time, and no one
Yep.
saw
I'm
it.
right there, right
Yeah,
there with you.
yeah,
Yeah.
man, we're just so I pity all of the young teenagers now. Like, I have a look at my boy and my boys. I got four sons, all adult sons, and they got up to their little things. But they. Uh, the oldest is 38, but when he turned 18, which is the legal drinking age in Australia, it was ID every day, like identify. But when I was that age, when I was 14, we used to have these drive-through bottle shops, where you didn't have to get out of your car to buy a case of beer or a bottle of
Yeah.
rum or whatever. And so when we were 14, we would save our lunch money up and we would all hide across the road from the drive-in bottle shop. And one of us would okay, it's my turn tonight. And they'd have all the money, and we tried to convert the coins into dollar bills, from our lunch money. And so you'd wait till there was no cars in there at all and run across the road and go in and go up to the guy and I want a bottle of, Stone's Green Ginger or whatever, or Southern Comfort or something, whatever. And they'd look at you and they'd look, no cars coming here, and they'd put it in a brown paper bag and quick, they get out of here. And off we go. And we go to the park and drink, like I was in a nightclub when I was 14 because there was no, they just looked at you and they would look at you and go, behave yourself. Yeah. And they're big, tough bouncers, they were going to throw us down the stairs. So we did behave ourselves. We could get away. We could just go and do all sorts of crazy stuff. And, but now, I think if they're 30 years old, they go into a nightclub, they get asked for ID. It's just crazy. Yeah.
Different times for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, different world, different, but yeah, going back to venting things and letting not letting that, pressure cooker build up all that pressure, leave that relief valve open. And we've got to communicate with others, be around other people. And that's good. I'm going to put all of your contact details where people can buy your book, etc., in the show notes, things like that. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't covered?
No, I think we've covered an awful lot of ground, and like I said, I've enjoyed it. The other thing I would say, and I guess I would close with this: for anybody going through any difficulty, embrace it, embrace the adversity. You can't run from it. Embrace it because you will learn from it. You will come out the other side a stronger individual. You will learn a lot from it, and see it as a gift that it is, truly. And like I said earlier, am I crazy for being grateful for all the pain? And I'm not. Be grateful.
Yeah.
This isn't heaven, right? So if heaven doesn't exist, then this is as good as it gets. And I've lived a pretty blessed life, but I'd like to think that there's something more out there.
Yeah.
That's where I'm standing. Yeah.
Excellent. Great advice, JD. Thank you for that. And to all our listeners, join in again next week and have a look at JD's info in there. His very detailed book, My Dance with the Devil, brackets, and her mother. That's it, isn't it? Yep.
Yeah. The third gift, My Dance with the Devil and Her Mother. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.